The tension between Pakistan and Afghanistan flared up again in February, and in a very short time moved from border clashes into a far more dangerous phase, one discussed in connection with airstrikes and retaliatory attacks. To understand what's happening, you can't focus on just one incident. You have to look at several deeper issues that have been building for years, because this crisis is like a knot that has been tightening for a long time and suddenly pulled even tighter. First, one thing must be clear. Both sides describe the events very differently. Pakistan says that certain areas on the Afghan side have effectively become safe spaces for militant groups that carry out attacks across the border. Pakistan argues that it is February escalation reflects exactly that. Statements announcing operations, statements announcing retaliation, messages like "we will not back down," and increasingly hardline rhetoric. The fourth file is domestic politics and internal security pressure. When security concerns rise in Pakistan, public expectations and institutional pressure can push decision-makers toward tougher steps. The Taliban authorities face their own pressures. When an incident is framed as an attack on sovereignty, leadership may feel compelled to project strength to its base. In moments like these, both sides worry that de-escalation will be interpreted as weakness, and that makes diplomacy far harder. So how did the situation reach this point? The overall pattern can be summarized like this. Pakistan said it struck specific targets on Afghan territory and claimed the purpose was action against militants. The Taliban-led government said this was unacceptable and announced that it was responding. After that, clashes along the border intensified. At that stage, the conflict moved beyond small-scale exchanges between border posts. Airstrikes and broader retaliatory measures entered the conversation. And once you reach that phase, the tone changes as well. Statements become sharper, the crisis is framed in larger terms, and room for compromise shrinks. The consequences of this kind of escalation are not limited to the battlefield. The biggest risks often fall on civilians in border regions. Fighting can lead to displacement, disruption of cross-border trade, and worsening humanitarian conditions. especially in areas that are already fragile. Diplomatically, channels can narrow even more. Every new incident makes the next round of talks harder. Information becomes more chaotic, too. In active conflict, casualty numbers and battlefield claims often become contested because each side may exaggerate the other's losses, downplay its own, or promote narratives that are difficult to verify. That is why, during fast-moving crises, outside observers frequently note that many claims cannot be independently confirmed. What happens next? There are a few possible paths. One is mediation followed by a quick ceasefire. This is possible because a prolonged conflict carries serious economic and political costs for both sides. But achieving a lasting ceasefire is difficult when the retaliation cycle is already running, emotions are high, and political pressure is intense. A second path is a longer period of low-intensity conflict, recurring border clashes that flare up, cool down briefly, but never fully stop. The third, and most dangerous path is wider escalation. If targets become larger, attacks become deeper, and both sides keep raising the stakes, the crisis could expand into a broader regional instability. In the end, this crisis is not just a sudden burst of anger. It's the result of overlapping pressures, long-running accusations linked to militant groups, chronic disputes over a sensitive border, a retaliation cycle that accelerates events, and political dynamics that reward toughness and punish compromise. When these factors combine, even a small trigger can turn into a major confrontation. Now, the key question is this: will both sides find a way to break the cycle and strengthen diplomacy? Or will the speed and severity of retaliation push the situation even further? Pakistan and Afghanistan have slid into one of their most dangerous confrontations in years. And what makes this moment different is not only the intensity of the fighting, but the direction of the escalation. What began as border hostilities and mutual accusations has expanded into airstrikes on multiple locations inside Afghanistan, and retaliatory actions from the Taliban-led government, an escalation described by senior Pakistani officials as open war. At the center of the crisis is a conflict of narratives that has been building for a long time. Pakistan says it is facing persistent cross-border militant violence and argues that armed groups targeting Pakistan find room to operate from Afghan territory. From Islamabad's point of view, this turns Afghanistan's border provinces into a strategic depth problem. Militants can attack, retreat, regroup, and return. Afghan Taliban authorities reject that framing and instead describe Pakistan's actions as violations of sovereignty and territorial integrity. In their telling, Pakistan is using security claims to justify crossing a red line, striking inside Afghanistan, while Kabul insists it is responding in self-defense. This dispute is inseparable from the history of the relationship between Pakistan's security state and the Afghan Taliban. For years, Pakistan was widely seen as having influence over the Taliban, especially during the period before the Taliban returned to power in Kabul. That history created expectations inside Pakistan that the Taliban government would curb anti-Pakistan militancy as part of a workable relationship. But what we are seeing now is the opposite. A relationship that has hardened into open hostility, with both sides acting as if pressure, not persuasion, is the only language left. This moment has been described as the first time Pakistan has struck such high-profile locations, including Kabul and Kandahar, in a way that publicly breaks the image of a former ally. The border itself is another engine of escalation. The frontier between the two countries is not just a line on a map. It is a deeply contested and emotionally charged boundary, shaped by history, tribal geography, and competing claims of authority. Clashes are often triggered by practical issues: movement through crossings, the building of fences or posts, patrol routes, and control over small pieces of territory. But those practical disputes quickly become symbolic. When a checkpoint is attacked or a post is destroyed, it stops being a local incident and becomes a national story about humiliation, sovereignty, and deterrence. The immediate spark in this latest escalation follows a familiar pattern: strike, retaliation, escalation, and then a widening target set. After days of hostilities, Afghan Taliban forces described their actions as retaliation for Pakistani airstrikes, while Pakistan described its actions as a response to attacks from Afghan territory. Each side claims it is reacting, not initiating. That matters politically because it allows leaders to sell escalation as defensive necessity rather than choice, but strategically it produces a trap. Once both sides commit to the logic of retaliation, stepping back becomes risky because restraint can be portrayed as weakness. As the crisis intensified, the conflict moved beyond sporadic border fire into a much more volatile category. Attacks reported on major Afghan cities and military sites, and countermeasures reported by Pakistan against Taliban drones. The situation has been described as fast-moving, where each side signals it can expand the fight if it chooses, even while also claiming it prefers a political solution. Taliban officials have said they are open to talks, while Pakistan has warned of strong responses if provoked, a combination that often appears right before conflicts either freeze into an ugly stalemate or suddenly de-escalate through outside mediation. This is also a crisis where information becomes a battlefield. Both sides have issued casualty claims that are difficult to verify independently, and credible outlets have noted that competing death tolls cannot be confirmed in the fog of war. This matters because numbers shape emotions. Higher claimed losses fuel anger, demands for revenge, and pressure on leaders to finish the job. In many modern conflicts, casualty claims, true or exaggerated, become the political fuel that keeps the retaliation engine running. Behind the military moves is a diplomatic struggle that keeps failing under the weight of distrust. Mediators have been working to diffuse the crisis, and that detail is important. It usually signals quiet channels are active and both sides see some value in stopping a slide toward prolonged war. But mediation becomes harder when leaders publicly adopt maximalist language, because the space for compromise shrinks the moment a government tells its people this is not a dispute, but a war. Humanitarian consequences are already a major concern, even if the fighting remains concentrated near borders and military installations. Calls have been made for restraint and de-escalation. They warn that people in the region have already endured decades of conflict and displacement. These statements are usually grounded in field realities, fear, civilian movement, and the risk that strikes hit populated areas or essential services. In the end, the question is simple. Will this remain a dangerous but temporary flare-up, or become the start of a new cycle that neither side can easily stop? If you don't want to miss content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and follow, and share your thoughts in the comments.